The S4 has been on its best behavior lately, and because of that, we've been tossing on some upgrades to prepare it for eventually going big turbo. I want to do everything I can beforehand so that goes as smoothly as possible, but at this point, the car's pretty much full bolt-on, so what else is there? We've done a lot to this car, however, I still think there's one thing we can do engine-wise that'll help the car prepare for big turbos. But before simply installing what I want to install, I think it'd be fun to take a look at the process before the install. Something not a lot of people really give credit to, but is just as important. Lately, I've noticed people only seem to show the results. All you see is the end of the process, the part you install and what it does. But that's not realistic to the actual process of building a project car. The real thing is a lot less pretty. Most of it is planning and waiting. But is that really a bad thing? So you probably know there's a little more to the process before you can actually install a part. As cool as it would be, these parts don't just show up by themselves. You have to pick them, and sometimes that decision is the hard part. So how do I choose a modification for my car? First things first, you need a bit of context, a problem you want to fix or something you want to improve. In the case of the S4, we want to eventually upgrade the turbos. In other words, we want to do everything we can before doing that, in preparation, basically. But here's where things get interesting. You need to take into account the constraints. The three constraints I generally consider when I pick a modification are budget, balance, and location. Budget and balance kind of go hand in hand. The long-term goal for the B5 is to upgrade the turbos, but that's not exactly cheap. There's a lot of supporting mods you need, and I mostly bring up budget because of some recent events with another car. That car has decided to throw a wrench in my plans again and again and again, and recently it seems to be requesting a turbo sooner than later. Awesome. In my mind, purchasing car parts kind of falls into two categories, something you need and something you want. The stuff you need requires less research because, well, you need it. The S4, however, doesn't really need much right now. And because of that, we can look for things to improve. Today, I've got two improvements I want to make. I want to remove an airflow bottleneck, and I want to make the engine bay look a lot less tacky. For as much work as I've put into this car and how well it runs, I've never really liked how the engine bay looked. The poorly painted Y-pipe and the mismatched eBay hoses definitely don't help. This is just an OEM S4 Y-pipe. It supports the airflow needed for KO3s, the stock turbos. Past a point when you upgrade your turbos, this becomes a restriction. And since it's both tacky and could hinder what we want to do in the future, it's a big enough ask for us to consider it a problem, meaning we're ready for the next step in my process. This step can make or break the install, and I would argue that this is the most important part of any car part install. This is the part that's honestly most time-consuming. Here you debate all the possible options, and weirdly, people never really talk about this. The countless hours you spend learning enough to answer your own question. In our case, we need a better Y-pipe. A real RS4 one is out of the budget, and a custom steel one isn't far off either. Plus, most aftermarket ones just work for upgraded turbos. We need one that does both. The cool thing with research is you'll eventually find an answer, and mine happened to come from 034. These are what's known as big bore lobster claw pipes. Weird name, I know. But basically, they're gonna replace the eBay hoses we have. These won't be a direct bolt-on though. These are really meant for an upgraded Y-pipe and big turbos, so we're gonna have to modify them. And after seeing these, you probably have a pretty good idea what's in the big box. This is a 034 Motorsports carbon Y-pipe. Much higher flow than the stock Y-pipe, gorgeous, and somehow still cheaper than a nice stainless one made out of steel or the OEM RS4 Y-pipe. Plus, it's going to perfectly match the carbon on our intake. I've already got another car with red accents on the engine bay, so I want this one to look a little bit different. I'm thinking for this car we keep it classy. I want an engine bay that I am proud of, something that I think actually looks good. And my current plan is to replace all of the mismatched red with either black or carbon, as well as trying to find some other parts that'll tie everything together. I think this is a good place to start though. The new Y-pipe is larger, so it's going to be a tight fit. To just what extent though, we're going to need to remove the old Y-pipe to tell. With the Y-pipe easily removed, we can set it next to the carbon one, and you can definitely see the stark difference in size. Rather than flattening after the split, this one stays a pretty consistent diameter. In fact, it's a ton larger than these eBay hoses. Just another reason why we had to upgrade these too. We're gonna wait to upgrade the MAF until we upgrade the turbos, cause we'll have to retune for that. Until then, this little accordion hose is going to stay the same, and we're just gonna run this adapter until we can actually upgrade the MAF and everything on that side. Same diameter, and since it's under vacuum, totally fine. What's not fine, however, is the fitment of the lobster claws that I got. These old ones are a lot smaller, and they're designed to connect to the upper part of the turbo system, the hose that actually leads into the inlet of the turbo. This metal guy on the left. We can't really replace this metal tube until we upgrade the turbo, but I want to be able to connect these two, so that's one less connection we have to worry about. These big bore lobster claws are designed to replace this top metal pipe that connects to the turbo. But once again, that's something we can't really do while the engine's in the car, given the nature of how this engine's laid out. Usually when you upgrade the turbos, you're going to upgrade this metal inlet pipe as well. And they make specific RS4 size lobster claws, so why didn't I buy one of those? Well, I've been keeping my eye out for a while, and believe it or not, I found this set cheaper than the equivalent that would work with the RS4 pipes. And given that it's made out of silicone, it's very easy to modify them to be the exact shape we need. They're the same diameter as the RS4 lobster, and while we still have the stock turbos and their metal inlets, we can run the bottom end inside as a spacer, effectively making it so that our bottleneck isn't anything in the actual airflow system. It's now just the turbo and the metal hoses leading in and out of it, which will upgrade all at once. Baby steps, in other words. Since at this point this was entirely just theory, the first thing I did was try to get everything set up and hooked together without hose clamps. I figured that was the best way I could test if my idea was actually going to work and if everything was going to clear like I thought it would. And so far my idea worked totally fine. Remember, this is definitely not the final setup. Right now, we're just in the pursuit of progress towards being able to do turbos. And to me, it makes a lot of sense to do all these small things that we can do with the engine in the car, so that when we do pull it, it's not going to be out for more than a couple days. Since my idea worked, the only thing really left to do was to actually install the Y-pipe. I tossed the modified lobster claws on, and I actually tightened them down this time. Similarly, I also fully installed the carbon Y-pipe and the rest of the intake. It's a small change, but I can already tell that I'm going to like this styling and visual appeal a lot more than the painted Y-pipe. Plus, knowing it's got the airflow to support bigger turbos is an even bigger bonus. While I was in here, I also figured it was a good idea to replace these red silicone hoses with some generic black ones. I didn't have a vacuum line that would fit the final red piece back there, but I have one on order, so don't worry about that. The engine bay now looks a lot different, and it's honestly going to take me a while to get used to. But there's another thing I was wondering. Does the car feel any different after doing this? I think out of all of my cars, the S4 is the one that I drive the most right now. The TT seems to have a new issue almost every time I drive it, and the E30 is just a little too new for me to really trust it daily driving. I know, right? Go figure given the reputation of the B5 S4. But it's true. I think this is also the car that I've done the most too. I bought it completely undrivable and a different color, and I've learned a lot from actually building this specific car. In other words, it's one I care about a lot. But weirdly enough, it's one I've never been super proud of. I really struggle only being able to focus on the small imperfections. That's all I really see when I look at the car. Sure, the whole car is a lot better than when I bought it, but to me, it's not quite to where I want it. The engine bay, however, just got a huge step closer. I think we made a good call with this Y-pipe. It's so much more menacing, and it looks a lot more put together than the red did. Honestly, to a degree I wasn't even expecting. Performance-wise, I'm sure that the throttle is a little more responsive. Obviously, I don't think this added a ton of horsepower because we really just shifted where the bottleneck is. At this point, the bottleneck is the turbos and their respective turbo inlets. We definitely made an improvement, but long-term, we've still got to save up for turbos. There's no real quick way around that. And with the TT demanding a turbo more immediately than I was expecting, that definitely throws a slight wrench in the plan. And honestly, that could be considered its own question. Similar to our initial question that we started the episode off with. What can we do to improve the engine bay and get the car one step closer to big turbos? We were presented with a question, something that we wanted to do. We spent the time needed to research and plan, leading us to pulling the trigger on a potential solution. And our idea worked. So, the problem's solved. The story's over, right? Not quite. That's the one thing about a project car. The questions never stop. There really is always more you can do. It's a cycle, and for me, the next question showed up almost immediately.
This car could use some better brakes.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. Right now, that's the best way you can support me. I've got a lot planned for this channel in the future, so I hope you are as excited as I am. I will see you guys in the next episode. Once again, thank you. Have a wonderful day.